Howdy, it's Kyle with part 3 of interesting or fascinating, intriguing, or amazing natural features in the US. The adjective might change, but the idea is the same. Just talking about a big variety of natural features in the US that shows off a great diversity of some of these formations we have in this country. I'll leave a link to the previous 2 in this series, but this is, again, part 3 of amazing natural features in the US. And what better way to view beautiful natural features than with a gorgeous Muir Way map on your wall? Check out this gorgeous map of Australia here. Check out these beautiful physical features. Check out these beautiful physical features. So they have all the states, a bunch of countries, really gorgeous physical geography maps. As always, there's a link in the description for a nice coupon code, a discount if you make a purchase from the website. So if you want a really nice map of New Zealand like this, check out Muir Way Maps. But yeah, let's get back to part 3 of amazing natural features in the US. I'm going to start in Utah and Goblin Valley. This is in the southeastern portion of the state between some of the national parks. So if you're going to be doing the big national park Grand Circle route through the 5 national parks of Utah, you'll be going right by Goblin Valley as it's right between Capitol Reef and Arches National Parks. And the reason why it's called Goblin Valley is because many of these formations looked like goblins to people who saw them. The actual name of the formation is a hoodoo, and these are most well known to be found in Bryce Canyon National Park, but they're also found quite a bit here in Goblin Valley. And how you get these formations is that there are several layers of sedimentary rock there, different levels of sandstone, siltstone, and shale, and with wind and water, the weaker portions get eroded, and if there's a more resistant layer of rock above, you have more of a cap rock, while the smaller and the weaker layers below it get eroded. So you can see this image here, the Goblin Valley itself. You can see the dried up water course, but when there's water in there, just thousands and thousands of years of pounding up against some of this rock, again, eroding the weaker levels of sedimentary rock, leaving some of the more resistant ones higher up. Amongst some of these natural features, you'll find pictographs done by ancient indigenous people. But because of its remote location, the first time non-indigenous people visited Goblin Valley was in the 1920s. After this spot became known, there was a lot of vandalism and theft of some of these hoodoos and goblins, and in 1954 it became a state park to protect the Goblin Valley. Keeping it in the same region, but going one state over, I'm going to the Black Canyon of the Gunnison in Colorado. This is in the west central portion of the state, not very far from the Utah border, and the Gunnison River is the river that carves out the canyon, and the Black Canyon of the Gunnison is about 48 miles long. At its deepest point, it's just over 2,700 feet, and at its narrowest point, it's only 40 feet wide. And the narrowness of this canyon is what leads it to be named the Black Canyon. It's so narrow and deep that sunlight only penetrates to the bottom for a very short time each day. The rock itself is not black, but it is darker than most of the sandstone you see in the region. You think of the Grand Canyon, that's mostly sandstone and limestone. However, the Black Canyon here is much more metamorphic rock, especially gneiss and schist. Because of the gradient, the Gunnison River is a powerful river, and the canyon was formed relatively quickly, geologically speaking. A good chunk of the canyon is in Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, but the entire canyon is not within the park. Downstream of the park is the Gunnison Gorge National Recreation Area, and upriver is the Curricanti National Recreation Area. Eventually, the Gunnison River flows into the Colorado River, and the confluence is in the city of Grand Junction. The national park portion is one of the lesser visited national parks, despite it being pretty close to all the big national parks in Utah. So with so many great national parks and natural features in the Four Corners states, it's often easy to miss some of them, including Black Canyon of the Gunnison, but don't. It's a really nice spot. Keeping it in the Four Corners states, but now going into Arizona, I'm heading to the Meteor Crater. A lot of folks know this as a Route 66 or Interstate 40 off the interstate kind of tourist trap destination, but it actually is a really cool natural landmark. And what it is literally a giant impact crater from a meteorite. The name of the crater is the Barringer Crater, and the name of the meteorite was a Canyon Diablo meteorite. The impact occurred approximately 50,000 years ago, and the meteorite measured approximately 160 feet in diameter. And despite being only 160 feet in diameter, the crater is 3,900 feet in diameter. The depth of the crater is about 560 feet at the deepest points, but it would be a lot deeper because a lot of the rock at the bottom of the crater is just collapsed rock from the sides. The meteorite was comprised of mainly iron and nickel, and the largest single piece of it is in a museum at the Meteor Crater. It's about 1,400 pounds. Think about how dense this rock has to be for this relatively small rock to be 1,400 pounds. If you were to visit, there really isn't a whole lot to do there. There's a visitor center, there's a nice film you could watch, and there's a guided tour around the rim of the crater, but that really is about it. And you can see this impact crater from satellite images. This is it right here. And as you zoom more and more in, it becomes more and more obvious this isn't a normal type of formation. Now I'm going to the eastern U.S. and Blackwater Falls and Blackwater Canyon, West Virginia. The name of the river is the Blackwater River, but it also is an actual Blackwater River. And for a river to be classified as Blackwater, it has to be more acidic, a lot of aluminum, not many nutrients in it, and the color is often due to many tannins in the water. However, most Blackwater rivers are slow and leisurely going and more flat terrain. But this river, being in the mountains, is actually pretty steep and has plenty of spots where there's white water. So you have white water on the Blackwater River. The Blackwater River has two major parts in West Virginia. One is the more flat-going part through the Canaan Valley, and the other is the more spectacular portion where it carves out the Blackwater Canyon. And the point of separation between these two is the Blackwater Falls at Blackwater Falls State Park. The tallest of the waterfalls is about 62 feet, and it's the tallest waterfall in all of West Virginia. But there are three other decent-sized waterfalls in the park at 40 feet, 30 feet, and 20 feet. Upriver of the waterfalls, the canyon itself is about 8 miles long. In the 20th century, the river became heavily polluted. There was a lot of mine runoff and other just pollutants going into the river. Restoration of the river began in the early 2000s, and there is a push to have more protection along the river, perhaps make it a state park for more of the canyon or even a national park. And it's worth pointing out that this state park is right next to the towns of Davis and Thomas, what I mentioned in a video about some of the best small towns in the U.S. So the combination of those two small towns and the really cool Blackwater Falls and Canyon makes this probably my favorite part of West Virginia. Next, I'm going to go back west to Yellowstone National Park and take a look at some of the geysers. And you've probably seen images or video of geysers, especially Old Faithful at Yellowstone National Park. And what a geyser is an eruption of boiling water and steam from beneath the surface. There's a magma chamber relatively close to the surface, so what happens is water as rain or snow goes into the ground into a porous rock chamber of volcanic rock, but this magma chamber superheats some of this rock, and some of this heat and pressure forces this water and steam out to the surface up through some of these fractures and fissures in the rock. It's the same concept as hot springs or mud boils, but without the pressure. So it's kind of like the difference between opening up a can of soda normally and then after shaking it. The most well-known geyser is Old Faithful, and it's called that because it's fairly predictable. It erupts every 1 to 2 hours. However, not all eruptions are equal. Some are taller, some last longer. But the main reason I wanted to talk about geysers is I wanted to show this really cool video I shot of Beehive Geyser in Yellowstone National Park. So this video is just from my phone when I was doing just a normal hike through the park, and then all of a sudden this geyser erupted. And it went on for a long time. It was probably going for 30 seconds before I even pulled my phone out. And it was a really strange sensation because you could just feel the heat and the steam as the water came out, but then as it rained on you, it was already cold. And like most geysers, this one is nothing like Old Faithful in terms of its predictability. On average, it erupts every 12 hours to every 2 to 3 days. So I was really lucky to be walking by and to see it erupt right then. So Yellowstone is home to half of all of the known geysers on Earth, including this really cool one here, Beehive Geyser. But speaking of hot springs, let's go to Arkansas and Hot Springs National Park. And this is a unique national park that is kind of urban but also natural. And in fact, it was the first land set aside by the government for protection anywhere in the U.S. This was done in 1832, long before the National Park Service, and it was set aside for recreational and medicinal use. And how you get these hot springs is kind of the same way as the geysers in Yellowstone. Groundwater seeps into the ground through artesian wells, and there's heating due to geothermal gradient, and it gets pushed up through the surface through faults. It doesn't have the same force and pressure to have a large eruption of a geyser, but you do have hot springs. And all throughout this area, there's all kinds of springs. Not all of them are hot, some are warm, some are even cold. But because of the natural hot springs, many hotels and spas open up just tapping into the natural water source. But because some of the spring water can actually be too hot, as much as 150 degrees, there have to be special things on it to keep the temperature cooler. The city of Hot Springs itself was incorporated in 1851 simply as a resort town for the springs. There's an historic part of town called the Bathhouse Row, which has many lodges that tap into the hot springs. And also really interesting is that there are public drinking water taps in town, but it's hot water. And you can also get free public cold water as well, but that has to be treated. So Hot Springs, a very interesting national park and a very scenic part of the state. Keeping it in the southeast, I'm going to Georgia and Ellison's Cave. This is located in the far northwest corner of the state, not very far from the tri-state point with Tennessee and Alabama, only about a half an hour south of Chattanooga. The vertical extent of Ellison's Cave is 1,063 feet. It's the 19th deepest cave in the U.S. Overall, there are about 12 miles of known passage in the cave. Most of it is horizontal, but most of it is vertical. But why this cave is notable is it's home to the single deepest pit in the contiguous U.S. There are several big pits in the cave, the largest being Fantastic Pit at 586 feet. It's about 2 times the Statue of Liberty. But there's also another huge pit in there called Incredible at 440 feet. Despite this pit being so huge and fantastic, the openings to the cave are actually quite easy to miss. You might not know that this little hole in the ground leads into the cave that has the deepest single pit in the contiguous U.S. This cave is dangerous, and there have been several deaths in the cave through the years, so this is not one for the faint of heart. You have to be super hardcore for this one. And of course, this isn't funny, but there was a couple of deaths in the cave about a decade ago, but you have some sensationalist YouTubers talking about this event, and look at some of these thumbnails of what they're talking about here. This is my personal favorite one, where they're in a giant underwater cave and there's a humpback whale. But what actually happened is these 2 guys rappelled down on the waterfall side of the pit, which is okay, I suppose, but when you're climbing back up, it's going to take a half an hour or so to climb back up, and they're in this cold water. They literally died of hypothermia while on rope. A lot of folks don't know that some of the deepest pits in the U.S., some of the deepest pits in the world are around the Chattanooga area, including the single biggest drop in the contiguous U.S., Fantastic Pit. From one type of cave to another, I'm now going to the Florida Panhandle and Florida Caverns State Park. Most caves in the U.S., if not the world, are limestone solution caves, and Florida is basically one giant chunk of unstable limestone. And like I just mentioned about Chattanooga area, a lot of limestone around here, a lot of caves being formed under the ground. But here we have elevation. Florida doesn't really have any elevation at all, so almost all caves in the state are underwater. And Florida Caverns State Park does have an above ground dry area where you can do a walking tour with parks that have lights. But most of the cavern system in the park is underwater, and you have to go cave diving to explore it. Cave diving is extremely dangerous, so you have to be very experienced to do something like this. With Florida, all that limestone, you have a lot of sinkholes, especially in central Florida. See, look at the sinkhole map of Florida. You can see where all the areas are collapsing, and up in this area is where you have Florida Caverns State Park. And this is another spot where you're going to get springs. These are going to be cold springs as the cave water emerges at the surface. And at this park and a few others like it, there's a blue hole where you can swim at the top of it, but you can also dive far down at that entrance point. And for me, as someone who's been in a lot of caves, it's always really strange to see these images of people scuba diving through caves or basically floating through the passage. It's something I'll never do, but I will look at the photos. I'm headed back to the west and Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho. And what this is just a giant lava field. It's exposed remnants of volcanic activity through many, many years. There are approximately 60 distinct lava flows noted in the regions, going from about 15,000 years ago to the most recent one about 2,000 years ago. And 2,000 years ago for an eruption is pretty recent in geologic terms, and this area will erupt again eventually. Earlier, I was talking about the geysers being heated geothermally in Yellowstone. Well, this area is just west of there. The same type of volcanic activity has led to what are these lava fields here at Craters of the Moon. And this is another spot with caves, but the caves here are quite a bit different because they're lava tubes. And a lava tube is exactly how it sounds. It's an empty chamber where the magma flows, so when it's dried up, you can walk through it like a cave. Whereas most caves are solution caves, usually sedimentary rock that's been dissolved and eroded, well, lava tubes, that's volcanic rock. And this park is quite a bit different than any other. It's just really surreal to be walking around on these lava fields. You can see why it's called Craters of the Moon. It was made a national monument in 1924. It was expanded in 2002, and there has been talk about making it a national park in the future. But national monument or park, this is the best place in the contiguous U.S. to see large lava fields. Well, I started in Utah, and I'm going to end there as well, this time with Cedar Breaks National Monument. I could probably have a whole channel just on interesting Utah natural formations, and Cedar Breaks is certainly one. This is in the southwestern portion of the state, closer to Zion and Bryce Canyon National Parks. And it's a pretty high elevation at 10,350 feet. And like so many other beautiful spots in the West, ancient volcanic activity got the ball rolling on it. This spot is called Cedar Breaks because the fissures in the rock were referred to as breaks. This area is still uplifting, and there are layers of sedimentary rock buried under ancient volcanic rock. And similar to Goblin Valley, much later on, water and wind eroded some of the weaker layers of sandstone, limestone, and shale, leaving behind some of the arches, hoodoos, and fins. But you can see from these aerial photographs that Cedar Breaks is basically a giant bowl that had an ancient lake with sedimentary rock layers. So in that case, it's very similar to Bryce Canyon, but the bowl is actually deeper at Cedar Breaks. And because of the higher elevation here and also at Bryce Canyon, you have a lot of frost wedging in some of the formations. So say you have limestone or sandstone with a fissure and water enters it. During the winter it freezes, and when water freezes it'll expand. So you have that freeze-thaw effect over and over through thousands and thousands of years. You can get some interesting breaks in the earth like Cedar Breaks. The park itself is fairly small. There is a nice rim trail that goes around it, but there isn't really a huge backcountry there. But yeah, Cedar Breaks, just one more of the countless number of beautiful formations in Utah. So that was part 3 of amazing natural features in the U.S. And again, link in the description to the previous 2 in the series. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more because there's just so many interesting natural features to discuss in this country. But if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up to let me know you approve, and subscribe to this channel if you're interested in learning more about geography from a nerd. And don't forget about these Muir Way maps. Great way to take a look at some beautiful physical geography on your wall. Link in the description with a coupon code and all that good stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Geography King signing out. I'd like to give a special thanks to my superior patrons for their support. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. As always, thank you very much.